Welcome back. Welcome back to the channel.
US Nationals 2024 in glorious Philadelphia is right around the corner. Like, tomorrow. So what better time to talk about the last couple decades of US National Champions than right now? So hey, I'll be your host, Nick Nurse, better known as The Bird, and let's get to this in one of the internet's native art forms. We're gonna rank every US National Champion in the modern era of 1A, starting from kind of the time around when yo-yos became unresponsive, and I can rank them however I want to. But what I'm really looking for is how iconic and important is this routine? How influential was this freestyle on the community, the culture, and yo-yoing at large? What kind of aesthetic appeal does the routine still have watching it today? I think it'll be pretty clear what we're looking for as we go on, so let's just get to the list. Of course, we have to address the strange tiers. The Worlds tier is for players that won Worlds in the same year with the same routine, because I'm going to make a World Champion tier list too, so subscribe to the channel for that, and it just makes more sense to talk about those there. And then the God tier is a very special tier where at the end of the list we're going to pick out one goated freestyle to be the one true god of US National Champions, so make sure you watch all the way to the end to see that. Don't even think about fast forwarding to the end, because I can tell. So let's get into it with Brent Dellinger 2002. This freestyle is a crazy difficult routine because if you pay attention, he's using a yo-yo that's still kind of responsive, but he's doing these crazy whips and lacerations that just, I don't know how you don't break your knuckles or face on stage using that thing to do those tricks. It's really impressive, really energetic, shockingly well choreographed for this point in time, way better than you would expect from something 22 years old. And my understanding is that this was actually a huge influence on Hiroyuki Suzuki's style, which means this is actually like incredibly important to the development of yo-yoing as a whole. This is the freestyle where Brent allegedly stole. We can talk about that another time. I kind of want to make a video about it. Comment down below if you'd be interested. The thing is that it's 2002, so the tricks are somewhat lacking. You can tell that a lot of the string trick stuff is still pretty new and underdeveloped. I really want to put this in A, actually, just because it does feel important and is kind of fun to watch. After watching it a bunch for this video, now I sort of want to be a lucky tango too, and if you don't know what I mean by that, watch the freestyle. We're gonna put it in B for now to be safe, just because the tricks themselves are somewhat lacking, and the fact that the tricks are hard because the yo-yo is responsive is maybe not the best reason to be impressive, maybe not the most important thing in this day and age. I think if you did the bird trick, maybe we go up here, maybe we even end up here. But he did the bird trick the year before, didn't win with it. So we're gonna go with B tier for now. Next up, JD 2003. Now this is an obvious Worlds tier. JD was super ahead of the game at this point, but he had a better run at Worlds, made the impact at Worlds, and that's what the Worlds tier is for. Augie Fash 2004. I love this freestyle. And this one is special to me because this was one of the first yo-yo freestyles I ever actually saw. This was the first national champion I was aware of and watched online. I love Augie Fash. I'm so glad Augie Fash won nationals. He is one of my favorite people in the world, the nicest guy you could ever meet. This freestyle kind of pioneered routine construction and choreography in an interesting way. He made a mega mix of songs and actually choreographed a lot of really cool bangers to them. Augie's style in general is super unique. He's just using mounts and approaching tricks differently than anyone else did or does. And I think it's totally worth watching because of that. And I think that he was the first one to sort of do it this way, which is really cool. The problem with this freestyle is that some of the tricks are kind of repetitive and it just doesn't really feel like there's actually 3 minutes of tricks in it. So for those reasons, I really want to put this in the A tier, A for Augie, but I think B tier is the right place for this. But let's put it above Brent for now because of the alphabet, I guess. Oh, Yuuki Spencer 2005. What a freestyle this is. You might think this goes in the Worlds tier because it's the same freestyle he did at Worlds basically, but he didn't win Worlds, so this is the only tier list we're gonna talk about it. Unless I make a video about the best second place freestyles at Worlds or something, but that'd be ridiculous. Yuuki had like the most iconic technical style. I think at this point in time, everyone in the US was kind of trying to copy Yuuki Spencer. Everyone wanted to yo-yo like Yuuki Spencer. This was like the best collection of Yuuki tricks at that point. This was like where he just went up on stage, teched out, hit pretty much everything. You could see all of it, and it was so sick. This freestyle is definitely lacking a lot in terms of the like routine construction, choreography. Like, it doesn't have impact in the same way that some of these freestyles are going to, but it had so much impact on everyone who was yo-yoing at the time. And I mean, if you watch it back, he still makes every trick look so good. No one can make these tricks look as good as he does. You just wish you could when you watch it. So this freestyle has a lot of like B tier energy, honestly, but it has to go in the A tier because of just how important and influential Yuuki's style was at this point. I wish that he had more of the regens he was doing at Worlds and some of the choreography he did there with it, but this era of Yuuki is way too iconic to put any lower than the A tier. Paul Han 2006. Just like Yuuki, this was a second place Worlds freestyle, so we talk about it here. And Paul Han blew the roof off at Worlds with this freestyle. You have no idea how cool this was in 2006. But I think that a big part of the reason it was so cool in 2006 is that a lot of these like big, long whip slack combos he's doing were sort of not possible on responsive yo-yos, so they weren't really explored yet at this point. Paul Han was definitely pioneering this sort of trick and showing it off in the routine with like the Paul Han laceration. It's called that for a reason. The thing is that these tricks haven't really aged super well, unfortunately. Now that unresponsive yo-yoing is so normal, this kind of trick doesn't hit the same way, and so much of the freestyle is this. I think those are the high points of the freestyle. The rest of it, like the technical tricks and stuff, just don't compare to what someone like Yuuki was doing at the time. So unfortunately, this freestyle just doesn't age super well, even though like the song is so hype, choreography is so hype. It doesn't super help his case that the only video I can seem to find of this has about 17 pixels in it. Paul Han is like the most stylish yo-yoer in terms of how he presents his tricks and dresses up there, but it's just the content isn't quite there and doesn't really hold its appeal as well in 2024. So unfortunately, we're going to put Paul Han in the C tier, but being in the C tier of national champions means you're still a national champion and still amazing. So there is no disrespect. I love Paul Han. Now, Yuuki 2007. You already know this is a Worlds tier freestyle. I think the Nationals run is actually better, but it's like the impact happened at Worlds. It's Yuuki's Worlds freestyle. It doesn't even make sense to tier it on a Nationals tier list. So Worlds tier it goes. Koloski 2008. What an icon of yo-yo. What a true legend in the scene. Has anyone done more for and with yo-yos than Koloski? Maybe, but it's a short list. What I love about this routine is that Eric's early style was like super intricate, tight, dense tech tricks, and Eric's style more recently is these super open, like slacky, whippy moves that are just really pretty to look at. And I think this freestyle happened sort of right when that change was starting to happen, so it has elements of both, and all the tricks are just beautiful and executed so well and so cleanly that it's really a joy to watch. I think what this freestyle lacks is some of the choreography and general impact that a lot of the other freestyles here have. There aren't really a lot of specific tricks in this that hit super hard or are super memorable, and I think Koloski's most iconic routines actually aren't this one. I think that having a national title is a huge part of his impact on the scene, but this specific routine is not the one I think of. I think of like Yala or some of his PNWR and VAC routines or Mass States and NER routines. Like, he's done so many routines. This just isn't the first one that comes to mind. So I really want to put this in A tier, but I think B is correct because it's just sort of lacking the X factor. As much as I love Koloski, two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet right here. B tier national champion is still a pretty good place to be. Okay, Yuuki Spencer 2009. Whew, what a freestyle this is. This is happening after John Ando won Worlds in 2008 and kind of showed the world like arm and body tricks. So now we get to see Yuuki Spencer mixing that in with the same like brilliant, beautiful tech we've already been seeing him do. It is an immaculate cocktail. I think this might be the best Yuuki's tech tricks ever looked on stage. I don't know how to put it into words, but they're just like perfect, crystalline, beautiful. All of the newer, more innovative like arm tricks are just like so smartly designed and look so cool. I love this freestyle to death. I can't imagine putting this anywhere but S tier. I don't even know how you can argue. What makes Yuuki such an iconic yo-yoer is that even in different eras and like completely different styles of trick, he is one of, if not the best. Always. He understands yo-yoing in a way that almost no one else does, and this is one of the best examples of that. Has to go in the S tier. Sebastian Brock 2010. Getting to watch this freestyle again to make this video was actually awesome. I love this freestyle and I love Sebi's style. This dude just does the weirdest, wackiest tricks in the most beautiful way and makes it look like the most obvious thing in the world when no one else on the planet could have come up with the idea or done it like him. That's what this freestyle is. It's just 3 minutes of tricks that are exactly like that. They're all beautiful and wildly unique, totally his own. The downside of this freestyle is that it's just Sebi on stage doing those tricks, jamming out to a pretty fun Beach Boys remix, which is rad, but it kind of lacks impact because of it. Like, I was surprised how much I liked this freestyle watching it back, because it isn't the most memorable on this list, because it is just Sebastian doing great tricks on stage. But the way Sebastian does tricks is so particular that with appropriate music use and choreography, the impact would be immense, massive, like it was at Worlds 2011. I really want to put this in the S tier for the tricks, but I think the high A is correct. I think that's just where this goes, because it's missing like the extra sauce, the X factor. I think Sebi's style is so unique that people like almost can't copy him, so this didn't have maybe the most impact on yo-yoing out of all these, but that's not even like really his fault, and maybe I'm just wrong about that. I don't know. So now we got Harold Owens III, who got first in 2011. This freestyle is ridiculous for a lot of reasons. I don't know if people are aware of this, but Harold was not a favorite coming into this contest as far as I know. He'd won some smaller state contests in the Midwest, but I think that was about it. And then he just comes out with this masterclass at nationals and wins it almost out of nowhere. First of all, you can't talk about this freestyle without talking about one of the greatest bangers of all time, that it's called the Harold Owens bind for a reason. He really made a mark with that. There's a lineage to DNA from that trick, you could say. But you also can't talk about this freestyle without talking about some of the most visually pleasing and well-paced tech combos ever that are just immaculately matched to the music. The choreography in this is way better than it has any business being. I can't even explain it. It's almost like synesthesia. But there's even more to it than that, because this freestyle has all these weird over the head and behind the head tricks that just use space in ways that were completely unexplored at that point, and honestly still pretty untapped today. People are doing a lot of circular tricks, but not as much like actually up there, which I think there's room to innovate. So this freestyle is like brilliantly of its time and also like shockingly ahead of its time. I think this is an all-timer. There's no place to put it but S tier. Let's put it high S tier. I love this freestyle. And guess what? We're gonna talk about some more freestyles that I love, because it's time for Zach Gormley 2012. And I'm not gonna keep you in suspense. This is another great freestyle. Zach was another player who was not a favorite to win nationals going in. Sounds crazy to say that now, because we know what the rest of his career looked like, but at this point he was so much more of a kid who did ridiculous tricks in videos, but often kind of struggled to hit them on stage. And then he just goes up and does the cleanest routine of his life with like 2 minutes of new tricks that are mind-bendingly amazing and destroyed the brains of everyone in the crowd. This was the first nationals I attended, and getting to see this live was definitely a super formative yo-yo experience. But I think that this was like a super influential freestyle for everyone in America. I think this did a huge amount to sort of define an American culture and style of yo-yoing, which with Yuuki Spencer taking a step back from yo-yoing, we sort of needed. This is one of the most iconic freestyles of all time. It's the beginning of the legend of Zach Gormley, someone who some would consider to be the greatest of all time. And this is one of his most iconic performances for sure, and like an unbelievably important and iconic US Nationals freestyle. So it's gotta go in the S tier. It's gotta go high in the S tier. There's just no other way. There's no other place for it. Gentry Stein 2013. This is where Gentry finally ascended and took a major win. And it's also sort of where he figured out the style that really defines who he is as a player. I think this is like a necessary step on the ladder to reach his like final form for Worlds 2014. This is super clean, brilliantly executed tricks to a really well-composed routine that builds to a strong finish, has really great choreography all throughout. I think it's pretty iconic just in terms of seeing Gentry come into his own in this way. I think it's really influential in terms of how American yo-yoers especially build a freestyle and like aim to win, and sort of introduced a new avenue to do that. But coming back and watching it in 2024, some of the tricks here are a little bit lacking in a weird way. And what I mean by that is that there were these huge music cues, huge moments in the routine, and the trick that's done to match them just doesn't really have a lot of impact on its own. And I think later in his career, Gentry got much better at doing big tricks in the big moments and not just overselling a smaller trick. And I think that's really what holds this back, even though so much of it is so prime. So I think definitely A tier freestyle, but I'm not sure if this one quite hits the S tier. I think A tier is right for this Gentry freestyle. I was the biggest fan of this when it happened. This was like my favorite freestyle, but it just didn't age quite as well as so many of the other ones here. All right, we're still in the Gentry and Zach years with Zach 2014, and 2014 Nationals was weird, man. 2014 Nationals, I think everyone had kind of a rough run, and this freestyle is definitely a little bit rough. And it's not Zach's best showing in terms of like choreography, routine, execution type stuff, but this freestyle has a ton of new tricks in it, and some of them are just like ridiculous. There are some lines in this that, watching back for this video, I was like, there's no way he just did all that. That is crazy. They also debuted the spinny triangle trick in this, which is an all-timer. That's one of the best tricks ever done. I think this also is going to slot right into the A tier. It's just missing like some of the things to make it pop, and it's a little too rough around the edges to slide into the S tier. As much as I love Zach's style, I think A tier is just right for this one. Look at the names here. This is US Nationals is a great contest. Gentry Stein 2015. Now this is another one that almost feels like it could be in the Worlds tier, but not a Worlds winner, so we're talking about it here. But the problem with this freestyle is actually that Gentry's Worlds freestyle does exist, and this freestyle is very similar, but not the same. Gentry sort of took out the first section, added a new section at the end, flipped a few things around a little bit, and I think that the Worlds freestyle was so smartly and tightly composed and arranged that by making these changes, the whole thing is really weakened and doesn't hit quite the same way. It also doesn't help that like the last section feels tonally really different, and most of the tricks in it were missed, unfortunately. The cool thing about this freestyle, of course, is that he did it on a cheap plastic yo-yo, which is super impressive and iconic, but doesn't really add to the legend of a national champion in the ways that we're valuing here. Like, that doesn't really give it as much lasting impression, so I actually think C tier is right for this, just because we've seen a better version of the freestyle. A better version of this freestyle exists. But, I mean, Paul Hahn is great company. C tier is not bad. Gentry Stein 2016. Now, we've been talking about choreography a lot and how a lot of these freestyles don't really have it like that. This might be the best choreographed 1A freestyle of all time. I think this is pretty clearly Gentry's most tightly choreographed freestyle. I'm not sure if anyone ever outdid it. The thing about this freestyle is that it really goes all the way in terms of getting the maximum value out of every element in it. Like, there are so many tricks that are done at weird angles, unusual pacing, strange body orientations, that just everything is so much more than the sum of its parts. This is such a cohesive freestyle, and it's also really exciting and well themed, and like the ending section is so cool. This freestyle is just so cool. The impact of the music use and routine construction in this routine, to me, was unbelievably influential, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I just have to give it props for that. I think Gentry's career sort of sorts into 3 segments: pre-2012, 2012 to 2017, and then 2018 to present, where he sort of had 3 distinct sets of tricks. And in that middle section, which is personally my favorite era of Gentry, this is the peak. I think this is the best freestyle he did, and for that reason, go straight into the S tier. You know what? That looks good. Blues next to reds. That's not the reason we're ranking them that way, but I think that feels about right. And now we get into the Evan Nagao era with Evan 2017. Now, Nationals 2017 was a little bit of a weird contest because it wasn't actually seeding into Worlds the next year because of schedule changes. And I think that partly because of that, this just happens to be probably the least interesting of all the Evan freestyles we're going to talk about. The main thing about this freestyle is Evan trying to match the speed and intensity of Busta Rhymes rapping with fast technical yo-yo tricks, which is really cool, and he does a great job of it. But looking back on it, like, the tricks themselves don't have much impact. It's a cool idea, but once you've seen it, there's not like a whole lot to get back out of it. I think that the overall impression is just a little bit lacking, and honestly, it's so easy to just not yo-yo to Chris Brown. And yet that's what happened. We all know what he did, so this is just gonna go in the C tier. But don't worry, there's plenty more Evan to talk about, like Evan 2018, which you already know is gonna go in the Worlds tier. This freestyle did win Worlds. It's kind of a shame for this tier list because I sort of feel like this is more of a Nationals freestyle than a Worlds freestyle. Just so American with Freebird. If this was gonna be on the list, it'd probably be like low S, high A, but it's gonna go in the Worlds tier because that's the way I made this. So Worlds tier it goes. Gentry 2019, same thing, gonna go in the Worlds tier. Weirdly, this feels more to me like a Worlds freestyle than a Nationals freestyle, so it'd probably go like B, maybe low A tier, who's gonna get ranked, but we're not doing that. That's what the World's Tier is for. Evan Nagao 2022. This was the first nationals after the pandemic, so we skipped a few years, and I think it's actually really cool that we came back to a national champion freestyle that has the whole TikTok DNA reference in it. I think it's done surprisingly tastefully, and it's a really cool way of like canonizing and acknowledging what we went through and how the scene changed over that time. And I also think that this is a freestyle that's just good. This is just a good freestyle. It's got solid choreography, it's got a good trick set, it's got some really cool bangers in it, like horizontal 360 Broadway hops is just a really cool trick that I like a lot. I think that's the first time I saw it. I think that it's just missing some X factor. This is very much like doing all the right things in a freestyle, but not really like going above and beyond the bar. So I feel like for that reason it fits into the B tier with these guys, but I like that freestyle a lot. That's a good freestyle. And finally we get to Evan Nagao 2023, which is kind of hard to tier, but here's the thing about this freestyle. I don't really feel like Evan's 2023 routine brought much to the table that wasn't already in the 2022 routine, but I just feel like it's sort of worse constructed, worse choreographed, and he made the song himself, so why is it less choreographed? It just doesn't feel as impactful or like intentional as Evan 2022, so I think this one is also gonna stick in the C tier, unfortunately. And as you can see, we now have a perfect cube, so I must have done this right because everything worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. And now it's time to ascend someone to godhood, figure out who our one true god tier freestyle is. But before I do that, I just want to ask you, who would you put in the god tier? And before you see my choice, who do you think I'm going to put there? Comment down below, I'd love to hear. But for me, it's very tempting to say Zach, because that freestyle was so different, so ahead of the game, so out of nowhere, and I was there in person. But I don't think Zach is the one true god for this list. To me, as soon as I decided to make this video, it was very clear who was going to go in the god tier, and after watching all these freestyles multiple times and spending days thinking about it, that didn't change. It's gotta be Yuuki Spencer 2009. He is such a complete yo-yo player, and I really think this might actually be the best representation record video of his skills and what he brings to the table. Like, if you watch this today, every trick is still something that I personally wish I could do. Every trick is still so good and so just aesthetically well put together and valid. This freestyle really hasn't aged a day, even though it probably wouldn't win nationals in the current age. If this freestyle had never been done, and someone went up on stage at 2024 US Nationals and did exactly this, I honestly think it'd be a lot of people's favorite routine, which is ridiculous and not true of a lot of these freestyles. It's got the choreography, it's got the construction, it's got the aura. This freestyle just oozes aura. Yuuki Spencer is so absolutely that guy, and you can just tell from this. So for me, that's gonna go in the god tier. And we made it to the end. Thank you so much for sticking around. This channel's coming back in a big way. I want to try and post at least once a month. World's tier list is coming before Worlds. All kinds of great stuff is coming. You're gonna have such a great time, so save yourself the trouble and smash the subscribe button right now. There are so many great stories in yo-yo history, and I want to help tell them. Like, leave a nice comment down below, or tell me what I could improve on, maybe what you want to see in the future. For now, I think my flight is literally about to leave, so I've gotta fly.